Hey guys, welcome to book review 132. Today I am going to be reviewing Walking the Silk Road, a modern day exploration of old Japan by William Scott Wilson. Okay, so this book is about the William Scott Wilson walking the Kiso Road, which is an old historical road, part of the larger road that connects Tokyo and Kyoto, but this is only a section of it, the Kiso Road. And it goes through a rural part of Japan, very mountainous. It follows the Kiso River, and largely, I believe, follows Highway 19 nowadays. But there's definitely parts of the road that go in and off that highway. Kind of impressions of the book. He's a very good at giving you the sensory feeling of being there. He really kind of relates a lot of the history very well. A lot of the Basso, I believe, B-A-S, Basho. As well as that's a famous poet that went through the area. There are other poets that went through too. Let's see. Santoka, he mentions that poet quite a bit. Let's see. Basho, there's another one by Basho. But anyway, it's not all about quotes from poets. He stays at a lot of there's two types of inns, and I don't know Japanese, so I'm just going to explain them to you. But essentially, there are the two types of old inns. They're not really bed and breakfasts, though a few of them kind of can be. But it's a similar idea in Japan. Small inns, small family-run, mom and pop, if you will, establishments. And one is where the more formal one, where dinner is served in your room. I believe that's a raisho. I might be pronouncing that wrong. And then the other one that starts with an M, but I can't remember, is where there's like a communal dinner or whatever. And he describes, he takes traditional Japanese baths being very famous, also being very useful for him because of the wears and tears of walking this. I think it's only about a maybe 50-mile road or something like that. At least the part of the Kiso road that he walked. It's divided into two sections, the upper Kiso and the lower Kiso. I was kind of surprised by some of the elevations that he said that the upper Kiso went through. I think he got as high as maybe 3,500 feet or something like that. And that's not the top of mountains, obviously, but those are the passes that he has to go through. Let's see, what else? Well, what time am I looking at? Oh, geez, it's only 3 minutes in. He talks a lot about, the kami and the gods that essentially are kind of line a lot of these roads. I often think of Japan in terms of climate, in terms of, not exact foliage, but as similar to New Zealand. But the biggest difference, I think, is that Japan has a huge history to it in terms of size, too. Has this extensive history to it. And so a lot of the sites, a lot of the even areas that you think are going to be completely desolate have either shrines or statues, smallish statues, like 5-foot statues or whatever. Dedicated to the various Buddhist and Shinto gods that are in the area. And something else that's kind of interesting that I didn't know about that was mentioned in this book is that even though Buddhism and Shintoism are considered sort of like the main religions of Japan, that there are numerous sort of sects, or you can call them cults in the sense that they worship a particular thing, not like they're dangerous. Well, they can be, but most aren't. Dangerous cults, like cults that we think of in the West. But there's like I believe it's Ontaki Mountain. There's like a section of Shinto believers that specifically worship this mountain. We often don't think of Japan as very. We think of Zen. We think of like clean lines, but we don't often realize that sort of the makeup of belief of a lot of Japanese is very superstitious. Superstitious in a way, and filled with a pantheon of gods, if you will, that someone might associate more with like Indian Hinduism or something like that. Let's see. Like, in addition to the gods that they worship, there's also in the book quite a few stories about, various instances that happened 400 years ago, and that's why this rock is this certain way, or that's why this shrine is in this particular place. A lot of them having to do with misfortune. For example, I remember there was a story where a tributary of the Kiso, there was a like evil snake or something that turned into a woman and told the people of the town, and she like cursed them somehow. And then there was a big flood, and then there was a holy man, an ascetic, that came through, and I think that's how you say it, ascetic, that came through and made all these statues and then threw them into the river, and that's why there's no flooding there anymore. And then like a rock formed that was the place, not the individual statue, but kind of the place where he threw it in. There was a big boulder that came down shortly thereafter, and now that boulder is remembered as a memorial site that people often go to see these the history of this event. Let's see, what else about the book? He mentions how worn out he is, even though it's not a very long walk. But I got the impression that the author was actually, if not elderly, getting up there in years. He talks about food quite a bit, actually making me quite hungry. He talks about the various breakfasts that they would serve, including miso soup, as well as Japanese rice cakes. Something really common kind of in the mountainous areas where they don't necessarily have a lot of access to seafood is river fish, being along the Kiso River, with various kinds of vegetables and soy sauce. So you see that quite a bit within the book. I already mentioned the temples. I mentioned the baths a little bit, the inns. Let's see, what else? He meets various friends along the way, as well as people that he just kind of encounters for the first time. Something mentioned multiple times in the book is the hospitality of the Japanese people. I imagine that this is even more pronounced within the rural areas. The modern wheel makes us all somewhat selfish, so you might not quite see it in Tokyo, but he mentions that there are at least a few times in the book where he mentions something within the inn that he likes and is left carrying it out as he moves on to his next location, be it a little trinket or a piece of calligraphy. The temples. I think I pretty much got a good idea. This is an awfully short review, but and it doesn't do this book justice. Part of the reason why I didn't do a longer review is just because I don't know. It was a good book. I didn't really feel like going chapter by chapter in it. He kind of talks about some of the economies of these various towns. And he talks actually not only about the economies currently, but that's one of the things that he mentions with the poets and the leaders hundreds of years ago that came through this town. Often at the beginning of the chapter, and each chapter is normally a new town that he moves to, will be sort of the impressions of these people 400 years ago, and then what the town looks like today, and then he'll go kind of into the specifics of the place he wants to visit, be it the inns, obviously, or the various temples or shrines or monuments. Sake. A lot of sake. I'll leave you with this, if you're a little bit of an alky, I guess. something kind of cool is that they take cedar branches in these at sake breweries, and much like American craft breweries in the United States, they're all over the place. But unlike American craft breweries, they're hundreds of years old. But the way to always distinguish, if you don't know kanji or I forget what the other ones were, but Japanese script, is that they'll always take cedar branches and they'll create these big balls, maybe like 2 feet, 3 feet in diameter, with various sticks, and it'll just look like this big kind of ball of sticks, and then they'll get a string, and they're cedar sticks, cedar branches, and they'll hold it up above the door. So if you ever want to go to a sake brewery in rural Japan and don't know where to look, that's the way to find out. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. I've been kind of going, well, I haven't been going on long, but it's a good book. Check it out, Walking the Kiso Road. I should really compare it a little bit to the other books that, just real quick. It's very good. It's very easy read, I'd say, though you kind of have to, much like the author in the book kind of takes his time, you have to take the time to absorb it all. But just because you have to go a little bit slower in reading it to absorb everything the author is saying does not mean that it's not enjoyable. It just takes some time to process everything that he says, every enjoyable thing that he talks about rural Japan. Okay, I'm sure I didn't do this justice, but we're going to leave it at that. Walking the Kiso Road, a modern-day exploration of old Japan by William Scott Wilson. All right, check out my reviews, you guys. See you later. Bye.